Tony, you ready? And is anybody on comm with Charlie? You guys on comm with Charlie? All right. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you all so much for coming here to the George and Joyce Wein Jazz and Heritage Center, which is the new education and performance facility that's owned by the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Foundation, which, as you know, is the nonprofit organization that owns the Jazz Fest. And my name is Scott Ages, and I'm with the foundation, and our role is to use the money from Jazz Fest for programs that we do all year long in the areas of education, economic development, and cultural enrichment. And one of those programs is the Sync Up Conference, and this is our 8th annual Sync Up, and we're delighted to have moved it to this beautiful new facility, and we're so glad that you could all be here to join us. And welcome to those viewers watching on Ye Olde World Wide Web. So today is Americana Day, and our first guest is Anthony Gino Gennaro, who is perhaps best known as the manager of the country artist Aaron Watson, who, after a 15-year career, became an overnight success, storming the Billboard country charts with an album that debuted at the #1 spot on the Billboard album country charts. So welcome, Gino. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I think that there are some folks in our audience who may not be completely familiar with Aaron, so I thought if it was all right with you, we could maybe show a little clip to explain who he is and give folks a little bit of background on him. Are you, Tony, you ready with that? Gina, is that cool with you?
Sure.
And then we'll talk and we'll get into how you guys got into this incredible position that you're in. So, Tony, let's roll it.
Or any major record labels, but it is a true story, because once upon a time ago, I sat in the office of the head honcho at this big record label, and I sang him some songs, and you know, he could have just, if I wasn't something that he was interested in, he could have said, "Hey son, you know, you're not exactly what we're looking for right now, but, you know, keep working hard and, you know, good luck to you." Instead, in my opinion, he kind of went over the top and he stomped on my dreams a little bit. And he basically told me that at most I'd just be a regional act and never anything more than that. And, you know, it hurt my feelings. Because, you know, like I said, I grew up loving George Strait, and Merle Haggard. You know, country music was my passion. And at that point in time, you know what, I'm going to have to get out there and plow my own road. And Fence Post, it's really about, you know, chasing your dreams. And really, I hope that this song inspires the listener. You know, if you've got a dream, whether you want to be a musician or a doctor, lawyer, professional athlete, or whatever you want to do, this song should inspire you to not let others' insults and put downs discourage you from what you want to do. And this song was a fun song to write, and I know that it's already kind of ruffled some feathers, and I really didn't intend to do that, but at the, you know, I am a hard-headed Texas boy, and
so this is Aaron talking about a song, Fence Post, that
what I
describes an
wanna sing,
encounter
I'm gonna
between
wear what I
himself
wanna
and
wear.
a major label honcho in
Now,
Nashville.
tell me what kind of artist you think I should be. You know, what you see is what you get. You know, I'm gonna keep wearing that buckle and those Tony Lama boots.
So do we have a little clip of that song?
Now
this is a true story for the most part. That occurred on the top floor of this big wig record executive's office in Nashville, Tennessee. Now understand I'm not poking any fun or disrespecting anybody. God knows I love country music with all my heart and soul, and I love the Grand Ole Opry. But I do have a problem with someone who can't even play a D chord on a guitar, telling someone with a dream that they won't get far. So this song is dedicated to all those underdogs like me out there running around. Don't get discouraged if you have a dream. Don't be afraid to chase it down. This is how it goes. He said, son, don't get offended by what I'm about to say. I can see you have a passion for the songs you write and play. But you lack what we all call commercial appeal. You just don't have what it takes to make it here in Nashville.
All right, so that's a little taste of Aaron Watson for those of you guys who may not be familiar with him. So, Gino, you were born in California, is that right? Whereabouts?
Los Angeles area.
Okay, and then moved to Texas?
Mhm.
How old were you when you moved to Texas?
About 13.
And your parents were business folks, they were entrepreneurs. What were they doing?
My mom had art galleries and my dad did high-tech startups, so always around businesses that, were being built and being responsible for employees. Always an environment I was around.
How about music? Was it much of a musical household?
Not terribly. We were kind of driven by excelling, business and on the sports field and in the classroom.
And you were an athlete
Mhm.
as a young man. You even played college ball, is that right?
Yep.
Baseball?
Yes. Out in San Diego.
And so tell us about that. Was that your ambition to be a professional ball player?
It was certainly guided me a long time in my life. It was the constant of what I did. I don't know if I knew what the end goal was, but that's what my life revolved around. So when that stopped, it kind of was like coming to an intersection on a one-way road and going, oh, what do I do now?
Did you have an injury or something? How did the baseball career end?
No, I wanted to enjoy myself in San Diego. When you get to the college baseball level, it becomes much more serious than just having fun. So, and I had done it for 13, 14 years. So it was just time to kind of close that chapter.
Right. And was it when you graduated college that you went back to Texas? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And what prompted that?
I just, I had the opportunity to go away from Texas and get an education and play baseball, but certainly, Texas had grabbed a piece of my heart and had a lot of, influence in me. So it was a place that I definitely wanted to return when I was done in California and done going to college.
And so, what did you major in college?
Business.
Okay,
Mhm.
business administration.
Yeah.
And your parents were entrepreneurs, so you
Mhm.
kind of always had this entrepreneurial example growing up.
Absolutely.
And so you knew that you wanted to start your own business and be an entrepreneur and make that your livelihood. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that when I was young, that was always my passion and ambition was to own a business and run a business. It was just more of a matter of kind of what.
What industry to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So, you could have chosen insurance.
Yeah.
You could have become a banker or a stockbroker or,
Yeah.
something. How did you end up as a music entrepreneur of all things? Don't you have any sense, man?
Yeah. Well, I was 21 at the time and thought that this would be a lot more fun than getting up at 6 and putting on a suit and tie. But at the time,
You're still getting up at 6, right?
Yes, kind of. Or
going to bed at 6.
Yeah, one way or another, I'm up at 6, right? So I was out in college in the late 90s, and at the time there was just a scene out of Texas emerging with a guy named Pat Green, and it was kind of like a real big sensation. So me being away from Texas and kind of having an affinity back to Texas, it was one of those regional things that made you feel connected to home, and it was the first time that things started being more available than just tangibly locally. So I gravitated towards that, and then I had an opportunity to helped launch a company called LoneStarMusic.com, which was an e-commerce platform.
So was that your first music venture?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so it was a web venture,
Yeah.
and your dad was involved in technology, so it's sort of combining a couple of those influences.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that they were like necessarily directly in sync with each other, you know,
Okay.
but the nice thing with that is that it allowed me to kind of paint a broad canvas of, you know, touching a lot of people that were in that ecosystem, to build relationships.
But the purpose of the website was to provide sort of a portal for Texas music.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, you know, you know, e-commerce was just starting, and I mean, we looked at it as, you know, global distribution for guys that really didn't have distribution outlets outside of, you know, maybe selling their records at shows, and there were some, you know, local, you know, places that would, you know, sell new and used CDs, and, you know, you might be able to consign a handful. But
And what years are we talking about here? Is this late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, 2000. Yeah.
So this is like still when people, like the only option people had was like CD Baby or something like that if you wanted to sell stuff outside of the mainstream system.
Possibly. I mean, I don't even remember.
So was the site successful? Did you
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of interest, and were people distributing music that way?
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, there was a, you know, a couple people dabbling in it, and the guy that came up with the idea and built it was a guy named Chad Rainey, and we went from, I mean, I remember the early days where we would go to lunch and have an order and come back, and like, you know, we'd be so excited and maybe selling 8 or 9 records, and within a couple years we built it to, you know, well into 7 figures of revenue, and came to dominate the space. So, you know, it was fun. I mean, I feel like it had great backbone and infrastructure on the technology end, and we definitely loved getting out there and hustling and building the brand, and, you know, so it worked for multiple levels.
And about how many artists were represented on the site?
You know, I would say today that, I mean, it is kind of the go-to, probably 1,500. You know, I mean, back in the early days, I think, you know, we kind of started with like 8 or 9. There was a lot of database entry, a lot of people, you know, we kind of built the forefront, and then we would have people come in. But that's one thing that I've always liked about that site, and what has helped me in other, you know, technology is such a important part of, you know, everything that we do today. And like the technology was so great that, I mean, we could just add people very easily and very seamlessly. So to scale from, you know, a couple dozen to, you know, 1,400, it was a pretty easy process.
And are you still involved in the site?
I'm not. So that they actually sold it a couple years ago. They've gone a little bit more Americana. It's there's a guy named Zach Jennings that's real passionate about, you know, that music and stuff, and he's having a blast with it. He actually lives in my same town, just down the road from me. So.
And it's still a going concern.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you transition from that into artist management? Was Aaron your first management client?
No. So I was, as I did that venture, I was coming home from, you know, California for holidays in the summer, and so when I stopped playing baseball, I you know, kind of remember having this epiphany one night that, hey, you know, you can be a talented businessman and know nothing about music and make this a career and get free beer and go to shows. Like, I'm in. And
I think that's what happened to all of us.
yeah.
Mostly the free beer and the shows.
Yeah.
Not so much on the talented part, but we're working on it.
Yeah, trying to get there. So you know, when I decided that, you know, that was the route that I was going to go down, I started really exploring all facets of the industry. I mean, like, I would have classes where, you know, if we would have assignments and stuff, I would try to kind of finagle my way into, you know, doing assignments that were based on music business so I could explore more. And so basically, I looked at kind of like everything from, you know, booking to publicity to touring. And, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, the manager is kind of the entrepreneurial partner with the artist, you know, and you're really the engine of growth and building a business. So, and then the other thing that I realized was that, you know, it's kind of the one role that doesn't have a glass ceiling. I mean, if you're, you know, in publicity or if you're in booking, you can be great at it, but you also have to have the resources that are within the agency, or somebody that's willing to, you know, kind of let you stumble along as you grow. But I knew that, you know, in the management role, so long as we hired good people and built good business and had the trust, you know, with the artists, that there wasn't going to be a glass ceiling. So that really spoke to me. And you know, so I took about 2 years. My last 2 years of school kind of really, you know, like going to Nashville, going back to Texas, working for somebody, doing my own thing, you know, exploring all the different facets of the business. And
So did you sort of apprentice with another manager?
No,
Just
I
sort of dove in and did it?
Yeah.
So who was your first client?
It was a guy named Owen Temple. So he does some folk stuff and whatnot now. But you know, another guy that was kind of in that scene at the time.
Are you still representing other artists besides Aaron, or is he your
Yeah.
only?
Yeah, I had I have a young guy named Cameron Nelson working on his second record right now. He's working with a guy named Aaron Schurz who did all the Maddie and Tay stuff, co-wrote Girl in a Country Song. So that's kind of fun because he, you know, has some great Texas roots, and we're building off of that, you know, ecosystem that you can tour and stuff. But then there's some great, you know, commercial aspects that are associated in Nashville, and so to have both of those from the ground floor and kind of come in very open that, you know, we're going to build a value in fans, but, you know, we certainly want the tools that are brought up there, and have somebody that's been commercially successful is fun. So.
Now, Aaron and you have been working together for a long time. When did you guys first meet?
About 12 years ago.
Okay, and how did that all come about?
Well, Owen, we were getting him out on the road for something, and Aaron's from Abilene, so he was kind of doing well at a dance hall in Abilene, but didn't really play anywhere else, or just starting to get out. So I kind of hustled him out of his date because I needed the date. So I, you know, didn't think much of him. I said, "Hey, kid, you can, you know, open for us. We're gonna take your headline date, and then we'll take you out on the road a couple places." And just figured I'd kind of move on. And I mean, I don't remember if he sent me the CD or I saw something, but long story short, I got a copy of his record called Shut Up and Dance, and I mean, I just thought it was a really great, you know, country record. And, you know, my thing in coming back to Texas was more about the environment where you could build something, but it was never about just like having, you know, a Texas act. I mean, the fact that, you know, at that time I had lived out in California twice. My mom was in Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, you know, we spent a lot of time in Chicago and stuff. It's like I knew products that sold because it was Texas, and I knew products that could sell from California to North Carolina. So that was the other thing that, you know, from the artwork to the music, I said, hey, you know, it is a Texas thing, but it is a very commercial thing, and that's always what I've looked for, you know.
So, well, that's an interesting story. So how did you guys decide to start working together? You heard the record and you just basically approached him and said, "Hey, you need a manager? I'm interested."
Yeah. I mean, we were kind of just both young hustlers, you know. I mean, you come out now and it's, you know, I mean, I always like, I mean, it was 4 guys in an excursion then, you know. Now it's like I show up and it's like buses and trucks and like, you know, here's your laminate radio, and I'm like, you know. But then at the time, I mean, we were just young and trying to put food on the table, so
Right.
You know, we both kind of had nothing to lose.
That's awesome. Now, so can you talk about using your business training, how you put the business infrastructure together so that his career could grow on a stable path? What were some of the important pieces that you had to put into place, even back then, before we were like, you know, all internet savvy and cell phones everywhere and all that kind of thing? What were some of the important first steps that you had to make?
I mean, I would probably say that, you know, the biggest one, I mean, was just touring and sweating on fans. You know, I mean, you know, Aaron works really hard, and I mean, I think that in those dozen years, I mean, you know, it's always been 2, 3, 4 shows a week. So.
And were you doing your own booking at that time?
Yeah. We, you know, it's kind of a combination. I mean, when you're doing $250, $500 dates, it's not like you got people banging down your door, you know. So yeah, there was a couple years that, you know, we had some different, you know, local relationships, and a lot of it fell on us. And then we went to a local booking agent for a couple years, you know, that was great in that scene. But then, you know, we wanted to grow and eventually, Ended up at Paradigm for a while, and then our agent went over to CAA, and that's where we are today. But I think that, I don't think that I knew a lot of the things at the time, but the touring, that's directly connecting with the fans, and that's going to be the single biggest investment that a fan's going to make. And people, look like, oh, it's $20 for a ticket, but I mean, in all reality, you're looking at $100, $150 for the night and 4 to 5 hours, from the time that they leave the door to the time that they come back, go get dinner, buy a couple drinks at the show, maybe get a t-shirt.
Pay for the babysitter.
Yeah, now. So if you can give a return on that value, man, that's huge. You're going to have somebody that's coming back year after year after year. So I think more in retrospect than the plan. I mean, at the time it was like, man, we got to make money. I got to commission something. So, get out on the road. And he's like, there was no, you can make some money selling records.
But along the way, you also had to kind of build up the front office infrastructure and, get accounting into place because at the time it was a small operation, but now you guys are a multi-million-dollar organization. And so there's tour managers and business managers, I imagine, and merchandising people and all of that kind of stuff, right? So,
oh, yeah.
So how many people are in the office now?
I would say like directly we have around 20, and then I probably touch 50 to 60 people. I was telling somebody recently, I was like, man, if I ever want to freak myself out, our direct people, it's like I'm responsible for, I think like 43 kids and $250,000 a month. I'm like, so that'll kind of keep you up at night if you think about it like that.
Payroll's a bitch.
Yeah,
huh?
yeah. It gets hefty.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So all along the way, and so you guys, or Aaron, I guess, set up his own independent record label, which you manage. Is that more or less it, or did you start the label and he's the artist? How does that structure work?
Well, at the time it was just, putting records out of necessity. There was definitely a culture in Texas from, the Pat Green records and some of the Robert Earl Keen records that, people were doing that. So they kind of, allowed us to say, hey, you could do that. So it wasn't like this big revolutionary thing where it was like, oh, we're going to put out, records ourselves. So we kind of just followed the path that was laid out to people. And there had become a couple distributors that had gotten into starting to put records out, and then one of them ended up going belly up out of Houston, and so David, who you will hear from later over at 30 Tigers, was just starting. We had kind of crossed paths, and so he had this new model, but he was hooked into Red. Like that was the thing, was like, when you're
Red Distribution, Red division of Sony.
Right. So, these independent guys, like it was great for kind of some of the things, but it's like, man, you could get into Walmart with Sony, like you kind of had that muscle.
Now, at what point along the way did that episode where the fence post story happen, where Aaron goes into a record company executive's office and basically gets told, "Kid, forget it"? Was that right around the same time, or
no,
was that earlier?
There's an ebb and a flow to Nashville, and it's probably the culmination of things. But on the other hand, he's been very passionate about what he does, and convicted in the way that he's gone about it. So I wouldn't, that was kind of more of a piece for the fans to enjoy, a little bit of marketing. What we did was part of our plan with this record was that, we had a lot of instant gratification tracks and really kind of, built up that snowball. And so that was, it was very much made to be a commercial mainstream country record, and so that song came out basically the week before the record came out. Was the last instant grat track, but it was one of those, like, it feels like when you excel and maybe you get better in your craft, people think that you're selling out if so it was one of those, hey, we're still doing our thing, like we're still true to the cause.
So he was trying to make a record that sounded like mainstream country, even though he had been kind of shunned by the mainstream country establishment.
Well, I mean, I think he's always been a commercial country act, you know, and I think that after making,
He's pretty straight up country.
Yeah.
I mean, he's all about faith, family, country. I mean, he's like true, you know.
the three F's that are the pillars: faith, family, fans, you know.
Yeah. So I mean, he's like the guy that is doing the, you know, the songs about the trains and the trucks and like straight up country stuff. He's not writing songs about, you know, mushrooms or something.
Yeah.
Like some other acts
Yeah.
that we know. So I mean, so you guys come. So this album that that debuted at #1. This was his
12th album.
12th album,
Yeah.
and he's been a touring act for what, 15 years?
Mm-hmm.
Probably done a couple thousand shows at this point.
Yep.
Can you? I mean, I know I've read the stories about how when this record finally came out and debuts at #1 on the Billboard Country Chart, and it's right in the middle of this big country radio conference in Nashville. And has he ever really enjoyed radio play on commercial country stations? I don't know.
I mean, I would say that it's, you know, been sporadic and fragmented, you know, and there's probably several reasons for that. I mean, that is definitely, you know, the Ferrari that is built in Nashville is, you know, mainstream commercial radio play. I mean, that is, you know, in my opinion, like the one thing, you know, that they do very well. You know, it's like, get in, let's ride.
Right.
But it's also, you know, you know, obviously after radio consolidation, I mean, it became a much different, you know, ball game as you had centralized programming, you know, and these Wall Street corporations that are looking for efficiencies and stuff. So,
I mean, have you guys ever done the radio promotions game where, you know, you get the consultants and they do whatever it is that they do to get the radio play, or have you just kind of ignored all that and just gone and done your own thing?
well, we're jumping down that avenue right now. So,
But that's more
David-
recent.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
and
So-
I've heard about 30 Tigers,
Yeah.
which is your distributor that you've
Yeah.
been with for a
Well,
long time, doing more radio promotion type stuff. But that wasn't part of the game plan, or at least not part of your repertoire. So that had to have been pretty sweet walking into the country radio conference, and you guys got the #1 album, and
Sure.
they're not like even spinning you at all.
Well, I think it was a great way to put him on the map, knowing that we were going to, you know, take this next step and open this next chapter with radio. I mean, you know, I was telling somebody over at Tennessee, and I was, you know, because it's kind of like asking about the timing and the planning, and, you know, I mean, it was definitely very strategic. Like, hey, you know, we're gonna go in on this week, and I mean, you know, we had our hotels and our flights, and, you know, thank God we didn't show up and we were number 3. Then it would have just been like, I don't even know if we would have come. But you know, yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it definitely gave, you know, something very positive to talk about. And it's not just like, you know, there's so many, you know, artists looking for, you know, introductions, and I think a lot of fanfare and fluff that are, you know, in everything that's, you know, bought and kind of plastered around town, and, you know, everybody's trying to break things out, and it felt like we didn't really do, you know, other than the kind of the main daily trade that just, man, we had that block on the front page that was just like, you know, #1 album debut. And besides that, I mean, there was no real fanfare. It was just really kind of, you know, hey, we're going to go meet as many people as we can and shake hands, and, you know, just simply introduce them as, hey, you know, have you met this guy who has a #1 record? So
Now, obviously, you know, 15-year career, 12 albums, getting to that point was hardly an overnight endeavor. So can you just kind of look back over the years and maybe pick out a couple of key milestones that you can say, this was a turning point, that was a turning point, whether it was, you know, either a particular chart position or a particular record, or getting involved with a certain company, perhaps 30 Tigers or an agency or something? What were the key markers where you could say, okay, this guy's really building that career?
I mean, probably the first one is when we started having the ability on our own to sell hard tickets just in Texas, because, you know, you go even from $250, $500 to a couple grand a night, you know, it's like you're just not literally so, you know, day to day on just.
And how many years in was that?
You know, probably like 3 or 4, you know, I mean,
So that's a lot of dues. A lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
dues paying right there.
yeah.
That's another milestone.
And then, I would say from there, once we kind of then took that to the next level, I mean, we definitely, wanted to start building a franchise. I've always been a big fan of like the Corin Capshaw, Dave Matthews Band touring model. And so, the agent that we were with, down in Texas, just kind of maxed out on his capacity at the time. So I think that getting that agent in Nashville that could start getting us into Kansas and Nebraska and Colorado, because one thing that allowed us to do was continue to grow Texas just through simple supply and demand, because it's, if we're touring 150 dates a year, but now all of a sudden there's only 110 or 120 in Texas as opposed to 150, maybe you're playing a market once less. So that was a huge.
And when you started expanding into other states, did that mean you had to go back to opening slots and soft ticket shows, or was he able to come in from a position of people know me and they're actually buying hard tickets?
Both, and it's still that way today. I
Really?
mean, oh yeah. I mean, we still have new markets that we're breaking, and whether it's a a support slot, for some young kid that is on his first single on a major, or just going in for a door deal, like, hey, trust us, we can sell tickets, because with all the successes that we've had, I mean, it's still a grind today. It's still a hustle and a sell.
Success just means you get to work that much harder.
Yeah.
How about Europe? Does he do Europe at all?
We do. We've invested in Europe for about 5 years.
Is that a good country market?
Yeah, it's funny. When you tour in Europe, it's like, like when we tour in the States, we're in a different state, but everything's basically the same, and it's kind of the same distances, but you're in a whole different country. So, the French love the honky tonkin' and the dancing, and we go over there and they have the satin dance jackets and the dance teams, and
Johnny Hallyday.
yeah, and in Belgium, I mean, man, they just like to pound beer and get rowdy and try to be rodeo guys, and the Swiss are very formal, and it's funny, the first time we played Switzerland, like, I mean, nobody moves, very polite golf claps, and then they're extremely insistent on playing multiple sets, and which is like we just don't do. I mean, Aaron has been very convicted from day one, and I think that was another thing too, is just a conviction of like, I'm not gonna play 3 hours, I'm not gonna do covers, like I'm gonna go in, play original music 90 minutes. But we ended up doing 2 45-minute sets for this thing, so we get over there and find out that they are so polite that the reason they have you do that is so that they can get up and go to the bathroom and have a smoke, because they will not do it when you're playing. So, but yeah, I mean, Europe's good. We're certainly we already have some things next year in Europe and are looking forward to returning, and we've also been exploring some opportunities in Australia. I kind of feel like his brand, if you will, is the iconic Texas cowboy that has the hat and the buckles. So it's certainly, I think that people have a huge affinity for that overseas. So we definitely look at it as a global brand.
And I mean, Aaron has talked about viewing his business kind of as the same way that the owner of a hamburger restaurant operates their business. Yes, they have to make a great hamburger, but they also have to have a clean establishment. They have to know how to ring out the cash register at the end of the night. They have to know how to, change the grease in the French fry fryer, and they have to, know the combination to the padlock on the dumpster locker and they have to be the full-on business person, even though what they really just want to do is sell hamburgers. Mm-hmm. And he kind of has equated that and maintaining a consistency of a product and having people be able to enjoy their experience. So he seems very conscious of user experience, of audience experience. Does he view his world in terms of maintaining his brand? Is branding important to him?
I mean,
Or
yeah,
do you?
I mean, I think brand is definitely a central focus, because I mean, you are, really kind of an open book 24/7 brand now, especially with, social media, and I mean, so, and there's more components, in my opinion, or at least with Aaron, there's more components than just, the record and going to a show. I mean, people, love the, affinity that he has for his family. And I mean, his, wife is very active on social media and has 40 or 50,000 followers. And so, yeah, I mean, brand is important, but, I mean, you need to be consistent. I mean, I always compare brands to, like, my coffee. It's like, I like my coffee, warm, not scalding hot, black. And it's like, I want my coffee to be the same every morning. I want my brands to be the same every morning. They can evolve a little bit, but you don't want to get too far, outside the line. So we certainly always, talk about that. And we talked a little bit about, this most current record, but I mean, it was, to me, it was like upping the game of the brand, but it was still in the brand. We said, as we were thinking about how it would be perceived, because we made that record 2 years ago. I mean, we explored a lot of channels with it, but at the end of the day, we wanted people that had invested in the brand to be like, man, this is the best Aaron Watson record I've ever heard, and people that hadn't, but they were fans of country music to be, man, where have you been? So we wanted to kind of play both sides of that.
And it does seem that he is also very aware of maintaining at least the perception of being very available and open to his fans. He makes like those YouTube videos where it's just him talking directly into the camera and just kind of really revealing himself in that way. And I know that he's also, or maybe it's his wife that's doing, are very active on social media and real inside looks at their daily life and interactions with fans and keeping all that really front and center and giving people the feeling that he is still very much a part of real life and everyday life and not just living some glamorous rock star lifestyle. So we have a lot of independent musicians who are here today and who are watching online. Are there any lessons that you can draw from your experience and your experience in working with Aaron and getting to this point in both of your careers that you think could apply to people that are not as far along as you guys are? What are some of the lessons you've learned or some of the important perhaps pieces of advice that you might have if you're trying to get into a similar role?
I mean, I think we've always looked at it as a business and a job, and that was very important because, I mean, it is fun, but all these decisions that are made are in decisions of having this operation open for decades to come. So I would, very much encourage, I mean, the kind of the art and commerce crossroads don't really go together, but they have to go together if you're going to be successful. So have
the economics of creativity.
Yeah. I mean, but that's the nice thing about Aaron and I's relationship is that, he is very invested in, the creative, side of it. And, I'm very, much driven by the business side. And so it's a very nice balance and a yin and yang.
But he also talks about it being a job and that he has a wife and family to support and people that work on, I mean, he seems very conscious of this as a going concern with payroll and just really keeping that machine going.
Absolutely.
Are there any specific things from having gone to business school that you would say are really important that you can apply directly to your life as an artist manager?
Well, I mean, just because of the environment that I personally grew up in, I if I could go back and do it over, I would probably do something that was more fun and enriching in college, because I kind of felt like the things that they...
Like you would have been a philosophy major?
I don't know. I like history, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's really no classroom's going to teach you, what the real world's going to teach you. I mean, it really is about the school of hard knocks, trial and error. And just, working hard and, when you have success, trying to replicate that. And, when you have a failure, dusting yourself off and getting back up and, working that much harder and then not making the same mistake. But, yeah, I mean, talking, about, just providing and stuff from Aaron's standpoint and to other independent musicians, I mean, it was all in. Like, we were going to make this work. It wasn't like, oh, I can't, do it this day because I've got to, work here or this or that. I mean, it was 24/7, You know, we're gonna make it work, convicted, passionate, work hard, build a business. So that would kind of be, you know, my advice.
Does anybody have any, are there any questions for Gino while we're here? Because I could do this all day. Okay, please come up and use the microphone if you would.
Hello. I'm an independent artist myself, and I play locally, and I find it rather easy to book shows in this city. But if I was to go on tour, I'm my own manager and booking agent and everything, and that's fine. But what would you suggest to go about talking to people in other states? Would you recommend talking to bands or the venues themselves?
Well, what I would do is I would just start brick by brick. So if you do well in New Orleans, talk to Baton Rouge or Lafayette, say, hey, I can sell tickets 60 miles down the road, you know, and then cultivate that, and then maybe go up to Bossier City, or, you know, so I wouldn't, I mean, think of, you know, in Aaron's touring model, I mean, we didn't go from, you know, I mean, in May I have him headlining from New York and DC to LA and San Diego in 1 month, but I mean, that has taken a lot of time to get there. So I would just, you know, go, I mean, do some reading on, you know, Dave Matthews and what Korn, you know, did, because, I mean, they came out of a very localized scene in Charlottesville, Virginia. And the thing is that you will see, I mean, I don't know if you charge tickets and what you make here, but, you know, as you start getting other bookings and somebody's going to call you and say, hey, can you play at my venue? And you're going to say, man, I'm sorry, I'm booked here. And then people will start paying premiums and calling earlier, and then you will start building your value. So
Start locally and kind of branch out. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, I had a question about the album release, and how are you so confident that you were going to bow at number one? Was that from pre-sales, or you said you didn't have much radio going in? So, can you talk a little about what you made yourself so confident you're going to be able to pull that off?
Well, the record before, which had come out, I think in 2011, debuted at number 9, and then we saw a lot of growth, you know, over the course of 2 years from touring and in our social numbers. Aaron had a song off of that record called July in Cheyenne. It's about a rodeo guy named Lane Frost. They did a movie called 8 Seconds that Luke Perry was in on it. And so, you know, like the Texas thing is a niche, but the other thing that I think is a great piece of advice is that, you know, we were able to become king in like 3 or 4 niches. So when you put those all together, they added a lot of value. But we went into NFR in Vegas, which is National Finals Rodeo, in December every year, and you know, it's about 200,000 people and $90 million of economic activity over 10 days, and you know, Lane was kind of the Babe Ruth of rodeo, so we saw huge growth. You know, in that kind of put Aaron on not only a new pedestal with a new audience, but made people eager for more. So that really, we've talked so much about, you know, this record, but I don't think as much credit's been due to that. But we just knew, like, I mean, when you look and you say, hey, I got 300,000 people on Facebook and 80,000 people on Twitter, and I've scanned X number of records and I've sold all these tickets. I mean, it was just a lot of data, and then we just had to figure out how to activate that. So, you know, that was, I mean, we built, you know, some intense demand and you know, I mean, I studied charts for 2 years. I mean, you know, I can tell you that, you know, my number going in and everything that we did was like, we have to be 12 to 15,000 records first week. You know, as long as
And you ended up doing what, 26?
26, yeah.
26,000 in the first week, and which is kind of a sad testament to the record industry now. I mean, $26,000 albums, 26,000 didn't used to be a lot of records,
Sure.
but today that's a lot of records to sell.
Yeah. But yeah, it was great to blow past our number. But yeah, I mean, it was just kind of taking everything out where we were at our business and then just connecting the dots. So.
At what point in this whole 15-year trajectory would you say that you guys first looked at each other and said, you know what, we got this, we're good, we don't have to sweat this anymore, this is gonna work? I mean, was it when you got to 100,000 Facebook followers, or was it? I mean, what was like? Okay, this is gonna happen.
I mean, I really feel like that Aaron has turned the corner as an artist with that July and Cheyenne song to be a guy that, as long as he continues to do the things that work for him, will be able to have a great career in music for as long as he wants. I mean, I feel like we grinded and hustled up to, we did that in the fourth quarter of 2012. So, I mean, it wasn't that long ago where it was like, and I mean, and it's still a hustle, but I do feel at this point that, we've really gotten people that, are so into what we do, so long as we continue to take care of them. But yeah, I mean, certainly there were pops and like, you started not having to worry about, next month's bills and stuff, which was exciting, but you were still kind of like, dang, what am I going to do when I grow up,
Well, I mean, at what point did you, first cross like the $1 million of annual revenue threshold?
Probably 4 or 5 years ago.
So that's like 10 years in. I mean, that's like building really,
Yeah, I mean,
steady and solid.
it's a little bit, I believe like you have to have very good infrastructure. So one of the things that we've done, and where I was kind of thinking is, we actually have 5 businesses for Aaron. So every business is siloed in its own operations. And I feel like
touring, merch, recording, publishing, etc.
Publishing. We have a coach leasing company for, well, I mean, it's more kind of internal, and there's just, for liability and accounting standpoints. But, it's like.
So you bought a tour bus and you lease it back to yourselves?
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, we have,
do you lease it to do you lease other tour buses to other artists? Do you have like a fleet of tour buses?
No. Trust me, you do not want. This is not a good business.
Okay, I'll trust you on that one. I've been in 1 or 2 of those tour buses. They can be kind of funky.
Yeah. Replacing generators in Detroit, the Series 60 engines is not fun.
Right, I got you. Anybody else have any questions for Gino? This is a great opportunity to talk to somebody that's been there and done that, y'all. Use the microphone, please.
This is a personal question. Hey.
Hi.
I grew up in Lubbock.
Okay.
And I went to Texas Tech, and I'm just curious where you're from.
Oh, well, I live in New Braunfels, Texas now, between
Okay.
Austin and San Antonio. When I was in high school, I lived in the Dallas area. So, yeah. Good to have
exactly
a
where
Texan.
you are.
All right.
Yeah, cool.
Don't come hunt me down.
We put your home address on the
Okay.
website. Is that okay?
Cool. Well, I just put it on the market. I'm moving, so it's good.
We are taking offers now, by the way.
Do you look at other artists now, looking to sign other artists? Or do your artists collaborate, or are you looking for songs to use for your artists? Any of that?
I mean, I think that you always have to have your door open to opportunities, I mean, I would say yes to all of the above, It's just, if it's something that can enhance any business that can be done, I'm always willing to take a look at it.
So you talked a second ago about having multiple businesses within your organization, and I think you were talking just in the case of Aaron, where he's got several enterprises going. So there's the publishing enterprise, the recording enterprise, the touring enterprise, the vehicle leasing enterprise, merchandising. Do you have that similar setup of different corporate entities for other artists that you manage? Is that kind of your model?
I feel that it needs to be the model, because you make effective decisions by laying things out that way. Like if I don't think that you can make pragmatic touring decisions if you're just there's money in there because you've sold a bunch of T-shirts, or like we just did this co-venture with Montana Silversmith, which makes belt buckles and Western jewelry with like a custom molded Aaron buckle. We don't know how it's going to go. I mean, the great thing about the merchandise business, the margins are so great that, you can swing and miss, and if you have to, you can blow out inventory, pretty easy. But it's like, if we had bought that inventory, based on, touring or, 30 Tigers distribution check, then we wouldn't be able to, I feel effectively, make good business decisions. But within the merchandising business, if we've had successes with other items, and we're looking to broaden our line, well, that, you know, it's like adding a rack in a store of something new.
So even though it's one artist, different spokes on the wheel, all feeding back to the main enterprise, but would you encourage...
Well, the main brand. I
the
mean,
main
getting back to
brand.
brand, yeah. I
Right.
mean, the hub is the brand, right? And then
Right.
you have all the spokes coming out of it.
So would you advise independent artists that are maybe just up and coming to have a separate touring operation, which is separate from their recording, at least on paper and financially, so that they
Yeah.
can make it, so each one has to be sustainable or profitable on their own, recording as opposed to merchandising, as opposed to touring, and also to help protect from liability, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely, you know, look at, I mean, they're each different business entities that make you up. So I would, you know, that would certainly be my suggestion. You know, I mean, we didn't start out that way. You know, I mean, we just kind of threw everything in a bank account and kind of made ends meet. But when it started growing, and when we, you know, I would say that as we got married and had kids and things started becoming serious, it was like, man, we need to set this stuff up properly so that we protect, you know, not only ourselves in the business, but, you know, our families and stuff. And that's when kind of we started developing all of that.
So that was more from the School of Hard Knocks than from the business school in San Diego.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we didn't, you know, we didn't get a hard knock that taught us a lesson, you know, too bad of a lesson. It was more like pre-planning, you know, we got kind of just wise to the ways, so.
Great. Well, you know, if you could sum up a piece of advice for an artist that is just getting started on their career and hoping to emulate the kind of success that you have, what would it be?
I mean, be convicted, be passionate, you know. I mean, you got to either be all in or not in, you know. I mean, or you can have it be a hobby, you know, but don't put part in expecting, you know, the same results as somebody that's all in. I think build a great team, you know. I mean, a lot of the focus is on Aaron, a lot of the focus is on me, but I mean, at the end of the day, it really does take a village, you know. I mean, all I do is talk to people all day, you know, and people, my friends that are outside the business say, hey, you know, what do you even do, you know? And luckily, I have a lot of people that are talented in specific things that they do.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, you know, figure out, you know, where you're going to be. I always like kind of the 1, 5, and 10 years. Like when I talk to people, it's like, I want you to come back and tell me where you want to be in a year, 5 years, and 10 years. And then we're going to build the roadmap to get there. So, you know, that might help you think more in terms of laying out a very strategic plan when you think a decade out.
Excellent. Gino, I want to thank you so much for being here. This has been great. Can we please have a round of applause for Gino Gennaro?
Thank you, Scott. It was fun. Awesome.
All right, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll be back with our next panel.